Hey everyone, my name is Jenny Wren Stotrup of Gritty Birds Podcasting and the Gritty Birds Podcast, and this is Free Fridays. And if you can, go ahead and subscribe to the YouTube so that we can go ahead and change our URL. All right, thanks so much and enjoy the video. Hey everyone, this is Jenny Wren, Gritty Birds Podcasting, and I am here today for our week 5 of our workshop series. And today I'm going to be doing things just a little bit differently than I have. If you are watching this live, you can go ahead and click streamyard.com/Facebook to be able to be added to the comments. And if you are watching this back on YouTube, please click subscribe below. We are pushing toward our 100 listeners on here, so I can change this name so it doesn't have a whole bunch of flibbery gibbish in there. So this is a series that is helping you get better at working from home, hanging out from home, working and streaming, getting better at your audio. And from Gritty Birds Podcasting, I've been in podcasting for 5 years and I'm stoked to be here. So I'm going to be doing a short slide deck, kind of talking you through some of what I've learned from events, and then also we're going to bring on the amazing Super Joe Pardo, who has been killing it lately through the Indiepodcon world, where he has been just completely rocking it with his virtual summits that he's been doing that have felt like not so much like a virtual summit. They've felt really fun and engaging and cool. So we're going to just get started today. I'm going to go ahead and add this to the stream. And this is today's Free Friday. Okay, today we're talking about creating and organizing online streams. And this has been really a cool one that I've wanted to talk about because just of the fact that we've had so many people, especially for me in the Portland community, where we're talking about losing event spaces. We're talking about losing all of that, or like not being able to go to conferences, but we still want to be able to get our message out. We're also having this need for fun and to be able to have a lot of joy in the things that we're doing. And so I've had a lot of fun doing different virtual happy hours, etc. And so I'm going to share some of that and kind of what you want to think about in your streaming needs for it. So we're going to start off just right away. And the first thing when you think about your events is, what is your goal? Like, what are you trying to accomplish from this? And what is your timeline? You know, do you want this to be a weekly thing? Do you want this to be a single day? Do you want this to be an hour once in a while? Do you want it to be a monthly thing? And then finally, what's your bandwidth? And I don't mean the internet. Yes, you can totally think about this in the sense of like, do you have enough internet to be able to carry this? But when you start something, you want to be able to follow through. So what is the energy level that you have that will help you realistically meet that pattern of time so that you can keep getting people to come back and back and back? All right. So first of all, when we think about the goals, you know, when are you looking to try to make up funds because venues are closed and you need extra streams of income? Are you looking to bring in new clients if you are like me and I do a lot of consulting as the primarily part of my work? Or are you looking for recreation? So some of my favorites have been karaoke and table reads this week. So we did the second Forrest Gump this week. That was amazing. And then I also did karaoke last weekend. And Shannon Hutt was on Wednesday talking about sort of what she's been working on in events and what that might look for her as a comedy promoter in moving to the online space soon. So, all right. So we want to talk about optimizing your stream. And this is from the streaming workshop a couple weeks ago. But if you are in a shared space like mine, you can use something like an extending router to be able to move it to more space. So this one right here is from TP, and it's just a Wi-Fi extender, and it's worked really great for our place. And then when we're talking about where we're going to be sending this, there's still a lot of options. Zoom, of course, drives a lot of people crazy, but we are obviously able to use it for a lot of fantastic reasons. Ecamm Live is really great, and Streamyard are fantastic. Restream is wonderful if you want to send it to a lot of different places. OBS has been around for a long time. I used to use it, but I haven't used it for about 4 years. And then, of course, there's just like the native programs. If you just want to stream straight from your Facebook app, you can do any of those, but you do have some hesitations with those. And that means that you can't be able to do as much. And we'll talk about that next slide. So there are some cool apps that you can use to integrate. And this is a great website that shows a bunch of them. So like when we were using a stream program that lets you stream videos, and it's like my shared watch together. I think it's called Watch Together. And that way we could have queue lists of your different songs, your YouTube, etc. So if you're having like a birthday party and you want to have a dance party and you're in Zoom and you want to share it, you can go ahead and have that shared screen. And there's a lot of other ones on this page, and that's Make Tech easier.com, and it's watch videos online with friends real time. And that just came out a couple days ago. And so it had a lot of those really cool apps. And I figured I'd just post that instead of listing them on my own. When we come into Zoom, we do want to think about our settings. I've seen people who are newer to Zoom that are super frustrated with it. And so I wanted to share the slide again. Again, in your settings, if you're going into the browser settings, in the first part, it says set mute upon entry. I really recommend that. I really liked, my friend June posted something today, and he was like, hey, I just want to remind you guys in meetings that, the bad etiquette in regular meetings. Now the bad etiquette is don't not mute your camera. Just make sure that you're muting upon entry. And then also you can have a waiting room. I really like that because you can just bring in people slowly. And it also allows for any Zoom bombing to be different. If you don't have a private password, if you do, you can go ahead and not worry about that as much. And then also you want to allow for original sound. It'll cut away that weird cutout thing that goes in and out all the time. So on the desktop program, the places in your settings are going to be record and multi-track if you're recording, and then also allow you to change your virtual background. So that's also where you're going to be setting settings for what you're using, what kind of camera you're using, and those are really great. So next up, we're going to talk about Zoom for just a second. So if you're sharing karaoke, say, I want to just give a couple things that we learned in our Zoom last week. You want to have whoever's hosting that We Share app to have the host be the person using control of that. Because anytime you kind of tweak it, it does have sort of an issue where it'll burst out or there'll be some strange sound. So let them handle that. But you want to submit it to them so that one person is able to handle that. And when you're sharing on the screen, it allows the whole main page to be up. And we noticed the same with our table readings. You can go ahead and share your screen, and one person can just scroll, and that way you can all read. And then also, if you have the person who's actually performing for especially for karaoke, you can have them come in, and this is at least how it would work in Zoom. And then they click share audio so that they can actually share the music coming from their screen from that app. So they'll have that app open, they'll bring the music up, and then they'll be able to listen to it without delay, and everyone else will hear it, so it doesn't sound terrible. That's a really, really great thing to do. And you can probably do that in Streamyard too. There's a link. So Streamyard's going to allow you to have up to 6 people if you're paying that $25 a month I am right now. And so you can have people coming back in and out, but then they're going to have to leave the group. So those are going to work best if you have a group setting. But if you're wanting to have everyone in the Zoom chat, Zoom is still going to be the better platform for that. So that's kind of the basics for that. And you could do that for karaoke parties. You could do that for, I think there's some really cool gaming apps too that allow you to play along with those so that you guys can play virtual games together, and you can create events based around those. So also remember that in Zoom, breakout rooms are options. So if you have a meetup that's regularly happening and you want to sort of separate into small groups, you can absolutely do that. I haven't played with that function yet, so I'll be playing with that tomorrow. I'm really excited for the Power Women's Meetup. And that's going to be the next one. So other things you want to think about is think about your audio. Is your audio decent? What's your background look like? Especially if you're doing performances. If you're just doing it for fun, that really doesn't matter that much. Also consider the overlays that you can add. So if you're performing and you want to have a ticker underneath like I do on here, I really appreciate having the ticker because it gives me extra info. And so I can go ahead, I'm going to see right here, and you're going to see that I'm going to hide this window right there. I can just get rid of that really, really easily. And I can change my different pieces here on StreamYard. It's super, super simple. That's something I like about StreamYard over using Ecamm. Ecamm also allows for you to have a header over it, but it's a little bit more difficult. It does have a separate kind of window for you to be able to do that. And most of them are going to have some kind of paid level for these ones. But one of the things you want to include there in that piece of it is, have your Venmo, have your PayPal, have your branding included, especially if you're a performer. So if anybody's wanting, or a DJ, or that way they can add to your little virtual tip jar. I don't have it having it up because this is a free series. Of course, if you want to, I probably can send a link for that, but that's not the goal of the series. But I would say, think of it having it branded. What does it consistently look like? And it's okay if you don't figure it out right away. As you can see, I've changed from week 1 to week 5, and it's totally okay. But have it be a regular time. That's partly why I have this 1 o'clock Friday. People can tune in, but they also know that they can go to my YouTube and check that out, or be able to watch this later. We've had some pretty good results with that, so I'm really happy with it. All right. So of course, when you're setting up your programs, get in there early, check your audio settings, make sure everything's working, because things go wrong all the time. Make sure that the levels are cool between you and your guest, check your video. Is everything all right? There's nothing more frustrating than being we're going to start a stream and then have everything not work, which is something you see all the time. If you're creating an event, it's really nice to make an actual event. So I don't have that up just because I don't feel like I want to maintain that every week, and people know that they can come to these pages. So you can go to Facebook events to set these events up. You can go to Eventbrite. I've done that for workshops in the past. That all allows you to actually you can have them pay through that, which is really simple. And then you just pay them a certain portion of every ticket sale. And then meetup.com. Meetup has really good results, I've heard, because it brings to a broader audience, where Eventbrite doesn't have the same kind of calendar capabilities that push out to audiences that you don't know that Meetup have. And then always, create a graphic for whatever you're doing. It doesn't have to be anything super crazy, but you can just use Canva. They've got some really great templates, and think back to your branding, just to make sure that it's really consistent. And, that's just kind of the basics. And because this is a short one and it's a continually evolving one, I'm really excited to bring on my friend Joe. And I met Joe, I don't know, we finally met this year. That was a thing that happened. And now he is going to be, I was on his show a couple weeks ago with Indiepodcon, and then I was also on the one of his first virtual summits when all this first began. He's had one since then and one coming up. So we're going to bring on Joe, and we're just giving him a big hand of applause. So good to see you, buddy.
Jenny, how you doing?
I'm doing great. Here now, yeah.
Yeah, you doing great?
Yeah, I'm doing great.
I like the wider view personally, but it's up to you.
I do too. I just am still trying to test this out because it's kind of fun. I can go play with the branding in the background. That's this is my whatever one. This is the one. This is the one I like.
I like the other one that looked like a desktop. That was pretty cool.
That one's pretty cool, but I love this one. This has been my favorite recently. And then I can add the banner back on. People are like, who are you? So welcome, Joe. I'm so stoked to have you on my show now. Tradesies.
Thank you. Yeah, all right. Thank you so much for having me on. I'm so glad that we were able to make it happen so quickly.
Yeah. So I noticed that you're now on to your third summit, and it's funny to call it a summit because what are you kind of calling these exactly?
I'm calling them virtual conferences.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, the summit thing, to me, a lot that's been kind of played out with the join our virtual summit. It's all recorded, and you can sit there and watch it and not interact with anybody. It's not live, and that's okay. If you're into that thing, then more power to you. To me, I like to interact with people. I like to make them a part of the show and feel included in their comments and for live questions and answers as well. So for me, that's where it's at.
Totally. So speaking of, now I can open back up the comments because I had my screen open, and Jonathan said it's super valuable. He runs Geekscape, love him. And he's going to be using some StreamYard coming up. And then Britt, she is the co-facilitator for me for Podcast Portland. And she says, have I had experience with OBS? I've struggled with it. I left it 4 years ago because I struggled with it. And I've only heard people frustrated with it. Because you have to go in, just because you had to go into the stream keys. It's not that you can't do it. It just was a lot of extra steps. And I'm sure there's easier ways to do it, but I found it so simple when I figured out Ecamm. I was like, oh, that's easy. I can just move over there. And same with StreamYard. I could just skip the whole step in between. So do you use OBS or what do you use?
I do. So when I stream my DJ sessions or my video game sessions, it's using OBS. I used OBS for a little while there. I was streaming using OBS to Facebook Live when that was early on, and I was using so I was putting Skype in a full screen on a separate monitor, and I'm this little tiny person in the top, and then my guest is nice and large, and it worked, it did the thing, but it just wasn't ideal. I mean, with StreamYard, it just works and it just makes sense.
Yeah, that was kind of the same experience I had and why I moved away and I never came back.
Yeah, but OBS is great for a lot of if you're gonna screen record. I mean, there's other options out there, but OBS is free, right? So
it is.
If you can figure out how to make it work, and I can share my screen. I could walk through some of my setups, scenes that I have set up. But if you can make it work, you can I've done courses using OBS to record those the on-screen videos, so I have my branding in the corner. I don't have to go and edit the video after the fact as much to put the branding.
I do that with Ecamm because it also allows for the overlays. Okay. And so that's the thing. It's sometimes I think when we get into our tech and we're like, I live here now, and I think But I do like, I know that there's a lot that I haven't gotten into when it comes down to video. How did you get your start into the streaming platforms in the first place? Because you've been doing streams for ages.
Yeah. So, I mean, it goes back to, I've been, I was using Skype back in the way back in the day to like 2004, 2005 to, face video, communicate with people that I knew. So I've been involved in the internet since like 96. And really have a computer since like 92. So for me, and that's not even that old, right? Like there's probably like some 50, 60-year-old guys like, I was doing it for that. Like, yeah,
my website in 96 was Jenny's Little Corner on the Web.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
I started blogging in 96. The Angel Fires, the tripods, whatever I could get for free.
GeoCities.
Yeah, GeoCities. I use that. Yahoo groups. Like I could, go back to all those days and using Front Page 97 to build websites and HTML before like HTML5 is HTML4 and so like I go back that far and to me, like I was like, all right, I want to. We were using like Google Hangouts for these chat rooms that we were doing with other Disney nerds like myself. So like we were like every single week we were getting together, and then I got into podcasting in 2014. I should have gotten in sooner, but I wasn't there yet. Even though I've been told from years before that I should have had a podcast. So I went and once I had the show, I think I started doing Facebook Live shortly after it became a thing. Like I was doing YouTube, was it Google Hangouts to YouTube Live at the in 20 probably actually I think the summer of 2014 I was doing it. Because we did like a party and I live streamed, like I had released a DJ album and I was doing a live stream DJ party, like there was people at the house and everything. And I was doing like a live version of that set. And then, of course, Google kept kicking me off because they had their, this is copyrighted music and blah, blah, blah. So probably since like mid 2020, 2014. And then, yeah, I mean, in 2015, and 2016, I got real big into like once Facebook Live became a thing, I was starting to use Facebook Live to go live and do my pre-shows. So I'd record the interview, do the pre-show with my friend Matt. He would come over and we'd record the pre-show on Facebook. And now I'm seeing these videos like 4 years later where like I'm holding my daughter, who's now 4, in these videos. And at the time, I was watching one that just came up the other day, and I'm like, how did I record this? Then I realized the camera's like real low on the desk is because I propped up my phone and that's how I was doing it. Instead of going through like OBS and all that, I was like, I'll just throw it up on the up on there. But yeah.
That's cool. When did you start? So Indiepodcon switched names this year, and it used to be the MAP conference, the Mid-Atlantic Podcast Conference. And then, when did that begin? And had you done conferences before that? I've
always been involved in events, going back to being a kid, swiping pens and pads of paper and other swag off of. So my family would have this event every year, like a thank you for our customers, like a customer appreciation.
Wait, so go back a step because I think it cut out for a second. Oh. You were doing papers, right?
No. So I would grab papers like pads of paper and pens. And stuff. When I was about 6 years old, like I was going to these events that my family would throw for like customer appreciation night. So we would have like, it'd be like 5 hours, 6 hours or something. We'd have like 1,000 people flood through the vendor booths and then go to like the open bar and the free buffet on the other side.
Yeah.
And, in the trucking industry, like everyone's like, oh, you're getting to see all the friends and the people we haven't seen in a while. And so it was like a big thing. So I grew up going to those events. And when I was about 12, 13 years old, 14 years old, we started, me and my friends were really into computer gaming. So we would have these LAN parties like every single weekend. So like, nice. It turned into like, okay, let's have like a 30-person LAN party. And I mean, at one point, I think we had like 12 people in a bedroom, in a 10 by 10 bedroom. Like everyone was, we called it cramped combat because everyone was on top of each other. And then that turned into years later, I was involved with the GXL, which is like we did 500 people at a LAN party. So LAN parties, for anyone to know, you bring your computer, you're playing computer games for like a weekend, 3 days, 4 days at a time. That once I got into DJing, then it turned into like, okay, I'm going to host these rave parties so that we could have events for me and my friends to go and DJ at. So did that, and then I was volunteering at some conventions, and all the while I started taking over some of the responsibilities for the vendor night at the company. And so when I left the company, it made sense. So in April 2014, I left. In December 2014, I made the decision I'm going to start a conference around podcasting. Awesome. And so December 2014 is when it started.
Very cool. And now you are independent and doing it virtually.
Yeah. So the biggest events that we were doing online prior to this was so for the anniversary shows of my show Dreamers Podcast, I would raise money for a charity, right? So we would basically this was the backdrop for the most part for those videos, where we live streamed for, I think it was 2 or 4 hours. We'd the first one we did, we had a house party where we had like 30 plus people come, and we play minute to win it games. And every time somebody would complete the minute to win it game, I would donate $10. But then other people would stack on $10, and we raised like $1,000 in like 4 hours. It was awesome.
That's cool.
So, and we gave it to Give Kids the World. So like that was the first year. Second year, we had just had my daughter, so like we weren't having a house party because she was only like 3 months old. So they left, went to my wife's parents' house, and my late friend Rich Quick came over, and Matt came over. It's another good one of my brothers. He came over, and we did it the whole thing live stream. So it was the three of us playing minute to win it games, but everybody was interacting. And we were using YouTube for that at the time. And I think we were doing Facebook Live at that point too, because that would have been 2016. So
one thing I'm noticing in all of these is that most of the events that you were doing, even to the LAN parties, to the events that you were doing for charity, that you were doing for the anniversary parties, like they were all pretty interactive, and they used a lot of games to be able to, bring people in and have that that tie, that movement. Am I reading that right? Yeah.
Even to Indiepodcon, MapCon, where we would do the creative podcast workshop.
I know, that seems so cool.
Yeah, right. So you get 20 minutes to compete. You join up with 3 other podcasters, so it's a total of 4 of you. You get 6 words in an envelope, and you have 20 minutes to craft a podcast, like intro music, outro music, and the whole thing. And it has to relate to those words, and then you're judged based on that, and you win prizes, fabulous prizes.
Yeah. And
so
that's awesome.
I would like to try to, get people out of their seats and have some kind of additional fun with what they're doing.
So as you started to pull together this next set of conferences, so the first one, you have a large group, a community called the Independent Podcast Conference group.
It used to be called
Icons
Conference. Yes, but it's the Independent Podcasters Group for independent podcast.
It's the Independent Podcasters Group. I love this community. It's really cool. But it helps because it streams straight to the group, and you automatically had that initial community to build into. But then how was it that you kind of helped organize this? Because I know for me on my side, as I submitted my proposal, I think we used Google Sheets or something like that, where I said, this is what I want to talk on. And then you were like, we're going to make it a 2-day thing. So what was that? What were some of the steps for you in getting ready for, essentially a 16-hour full weekend, and now these 8-hour conferences that you're doing, where even the stamina or just some of the organizational sides of making sure that you're really on top of it, and that some of the steps people wouldn't think of, with the graphics and stuff that you had, that you're taking from your experience in conferences that you're moving over to the online.
Yeah. So, well, thank you first off. It wasn't always so big. I will say this: if you're thinking that your name might be holding you back, try a different name. It's because calling it Mid-Atlantic Podcast Conference and Mid-Atlantic. People love MapCon. It's a thing that people really love, for many years. But ultimately, changing it from independent podcast from MapCon to Icon Independent Podcast Conference, it went from like a Facebook group that was only really active for like a month ahead of the conference and like a couple weeks after the conference to a lot of like people joining the group. Like every day we have like 1 to 5 people joining the group. So and that's just from a name change. It's without zero marketing. People are just looking for it, finding it, and jumping right in. So definitely think about that. So for me, like, all right, so I got back and from Disney and from Podfest March 15th, and so it was a few days of like trying to like get our bearings and see what the heck was going to happen and what was going on, and like,
but not much time.
Well, okay, so by Thursday morning, I had decided, okay, we're going to host this conference. So I get back on Sunday. By Thursday, I'm like, okay, we're cool now. Like everything's kind of settled for now. I need to do something. Like I want to bring people together and I want people to have a great time. So I put this, I put the offer or the sheet up and I think I put it out there like, hey, I'm thinking about doing this, and reached out to a couple people and they're like, yeah, that sounds like a great idea. So we did it. I put the sheet up. People submitted. We had about 60 people submit to talk. And my original idea was it was just Saturday, like 8 hours, I'll do 9 to 5. And cause I don't want to leave my wife too long with the kids all by herself. And, if I can help it, especially on the weekends and stuff. So we had so many people that I'm messaging the people back and forth on my team for Icon, and they're like, well, because I'm like, well, maybe I could start this at like, if I start at like 6 a.m. and wrap up after midnight, like, and give everybody like 18 minutes instead of 20 minutes, like I could fit like most of the people in there that is submitted. And they're like, Joe, you shouldn't be taking everybody. I was like, yeah, but all the names are names that I for the most part I know and I trust are going to have great talks. So shout out to Amy J for trying to be a voice of reason, but ultimately I was like, nah, I can't do that. It's like I can't expect myself to do like 18 hours in a row. Like that just isn't feasible. So then
like the LAN parties were from the past.
yeah. Sleeping on the floor, on concrete floor in a sleeping bag is from the past. I'm not doing that anymore. Not sleeping under tables and I grew up out of that.
Yeah, I was still doing it for conferences like 4 years ago, and I'm like, no. There's no more sleeping on floors because I want to cover an event.
I want to. Yeah, well, that too, right? I want to be involved, and I also want to be able to not have my back hurt.
So Amy J gives you the voice of reason, and they're like, no.
Same thing. She's like, no, Joe, that seems like a lot. And I'm like, but I don't want to turn people down. Like to me, I saw it as an opportunity to grow the community, right? So from September, when we changed the name to middle of March, we had grown from like 450 members or something like that in the group to 700 some members in the group. So we grew like 300 members, like just organically, like because the name changed.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so I was like, I want to grow the group. I want people to be involved. I want people to share it out. I want people to bring the right people to the group. I'm gonna find a way to at least get 2/3 of them. So what I settled on was 2 days. I wasn't planning on it, and then I was really nervous that people are gonna be like, "Well, I'm busy on Sunday. Like, I can't do that." And then I'm like gonna be rearranging the schedule and all that stuff, and I was pretty nervous like about all that, and I kind of had a little bit of doubt myself. And then I ran into the technical issues of doing this.
What were the technical issues of it?
So Facebook Live only lets you go for 8 hours. YouTube lets you go for 12. Well, the problem with 8 hours is I was like, well, one of the days to fit everybody in, I went from 8 a.m. till 6 p.m. That was on Sunday. I went from 9 to 5 on Saturday, but even that I knew we were going to run over, but if we ran over even just like 1 minute, like it would have just got cut off and then it would be over. So I'm like, okay, so we got to do 2 streams. So I like set up like like the links, so and I set a timer on my phone so I wouldn't forget to switch. So all I had to do was just like open up the links, drop in like pretty link. Like I went to pretty links on the website and on my website, and I changed over so people didn't have to know like, oh, if you're before 1:30 a.m. Eastern or 1:30 p.m. Eastern, you use this join link. Versus
I wish I'd realized that when you were like, we're going to switch the feeds, because I realized that later that if I clicked it, I could have left the watch party up, and that was an interesting learn on my end. But I didn't know what Pretty Links before today. So
okay, wow. So
cool.
Pretty Links is awesome and totally free. So and I was nervous about like, okay, so are people going to make the jump? How do I make this easy? So like I even went as far to like I in StreamYard I like scheduled them like 1, 2, 3, 4. I scheduled all 4 of them, and then I in the Facebook group, because that's where we were primarily streaming to. I was streaming the YouTube too, and I wasn't sure if I was going to put the link up because I didn't want people to not join the group and just watch
the commentary, right?
Yeah,
the conversation's easier on Facebook than like if you were using the YouTube.
It worked on both, but missing. You're only going to see what's happening on YouTube, not on Facebook, unless I put it on the screen. So
yes. That's something actually important to note, that you can get the comments from different places, but it looks a little different based on where you host it from, right?
Yes. Yeah, they will look a little different, and you can't always, if you're doing multiple streams out of StreamYard, you can't reply to both things. So, well, at least at that time I couldn't, but then
that was what it was. Okay.
Yeah, but then when I did the second conference, I was able to reply to both. I don't know what was different, unless it was
maybe it's changing or growing or
YouTube. I don't know, because then I went to Facebook page and YouTube instead of a group in YouTube. So I haven't gone back and retested it, but
I've only played so far. I haven't tried the YouTube just because I only have like 50 followers on there, and it's not a huge place at the moment. So for me, my largest audience is in my personal. And so it's going to Grady Bird's podcasting, just so I don't have to repost it to my business page. And then even though Grady Bird's podcast has 1,000 followers, is way more. I was just like, I want to leave this particular piece of it as podcasting and streaming, and leave Grady Bird's for music, and that's sort of where for streaming, I have all these ideas for doing some virtual concerts or virtual concert series, that are long, festivals, to be able to do that with Grady Bird's. And I'm curious about those, and I'm going to be beta testing those too. I'll get back to you on it as well.
Yeah. So it was just a lot of things, like little things that I had to find out. And then I was worried that I wasn't going to have the recordings because the recordings only go to 4 hours on StreamYard for the basic account, versus the pro account goes to 8. That wouldn't have been long enough anyway. So so I was like, all right, I just had to pick a time to do it. And then of course the time I picked was right up against when Max joined, and Max joined way early, and I'm like, oh, Max. Well, Max, if anyone doesn't know, a blind blogger, he's blind.
Okay, I was like, I don't know. Oh yes, Max. Yes.
Yeah. So that becomes another problem, because like we're minutes, like 10 minutes away, and I am like sitting there frantically texting him saying, you need to go back. Like I already changed the link. You need to do it again. But he just like hit the refresh button and stayed in the same chat room or the same StreamYard instance. So I'm like, there's so many little technical issues that like going that long becomes a problem. So like those are the types of things. So like I mitigated for the most part all of them, and was able to keep people in line, and we were actually ran within, I think, like 10 minutes on the first day. We were behind a little bit, but it wasn't too bad. Now with that said,
I would say for any event, that's huge. I've been working in events forever as well. And I started off doing catering even before, and before that it was theater for years and years and years. And the big thing that always happens is nothing's ever on time. And I'm always amazed there's certain venues in Portland that I have like so much respect for that always are on time, or like certain conferences that really make that work. And it's a skill to try not to have anything get delayed, because it's very, very simple to have everything go wrong, especially virtually, like you mentioned. Like small little tweaks can all of a sudden throw everything off.
Yeah. Well, look, and Amy J, shout out to her. She does a fantastic job year after year, keeping me on time, texting me throughout the event, making sure, because she's my, my timekeeper, and writing the schedule and rewriting the schedule and like moving all the, so those things plus, getting up and down in front of the room takes up time. You want to do proper introductions for people. You have to wait for them to get up and walk up. Like all that takes time versus like in virtual. I'm a couple clicks away. I say my thing, click. Okay, I'm going to give you you're on. In fact, so much of that in the second virtual conference I did, the Super Entrepreneur Conference under the Super Joe Pardo brand. We actually ran close to 10 minutes ahead of schedule. I actually
believe that with entrepreneurs.
Yeah, well, part of the problem, I guess, part of the problem with that was that people weren't showing up early enough to the conference. It's Larry says Super Joe is a tight ship. You best be on time if you're a persona. So. Yeah, Larry, you clearly haven't been to an Icon event because if you have, it runs a little behind.
So that was actually like what I did for Podcast Movement Evolutions is I was in the room making sure everything was on time. That was my whole job. Like talking to people before and be like, you got to get up here. I know that they were an amazing speaker, but you have to quit talking to them, go to the back because someone else needs 30 minutes too. Yeah. They didn't have any buffer.
So speaking of being on time, like growing up and going to these LAN parties, right? Like we would do these tournaments, and the tournament would be like scheduled for like, I don't know, 4 or 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock in the afternoon. Yeah. They would be 6 to 8 hours behind. Like, so not only are you behind, but like I got to compete at like 1 o'clock in the morning when we're just getting started. Like that's not even the end of it.
As a performer, that was my worst. As a singer, I hated being the closer because I was always like really tired. I'm a person who likes to be in bed by like 10, 11, even if I'm just hanging out. So like playing at 11, 11:30 killed me every time because we'd get to the venue at like 2 o'clock to do the setup. Then you'd wander around and you're like, God, it's really an honor to be closing, but this sucks.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it so that's the kind of stuff that like I would deal with the we'd have these tournaments and it would just take hours to get set because who doesn't have the game, who didn't get it set up properly, who's got issues with their computer, like who's got issues getting the server up and running. Like so those are the kinds of technical issues that like I just grew up around and doing and mitigating. So for me, like, yeah, I mean we do our best, but
I had never thought of that. Because I guess for me, I did all the tech like solo. And my experience into tech is sort of like I didn't think I'd really talk to people about the fact that I knew it all. And I don't mean know it all. Sorry, that came out completely wrong. But more like my dad was a tech person. And so I'd been raised around it like since I was really, really little. And we had internet before most people. And he was encouraging of websites and why I had one at like 12, 13, just because it was like hanging out at home in the cold in Iowa. It's like 30 degrees there right now. What do? You don't walk around the neighborhood. The dog is like wanting to walk right now. So bad, apparently. So it's like you figure out the things that work for you. But I never did LAN parties and I never did some of those streaming group things. So I think that's really cool to learn how you learn to mitigate and troubleshoot like through those events.
Yeah, so it's a weird path to come. I mean, most people probably don't. At least that I've seen, don't talk about going to their LAN parties.
I would say the people I worked at Guitar Center did. 100%.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Oh, like all the techie boys on my pro audio. A lot of my pro audio, not all.
Pro audio. Pro audio is different than the rest of the people probably working there.
We're a special bunch.
So like that's I try to keep it tight, but it's definitely difficult and even seeing like, oh no, like there's 5 minutes before, like this person has, like Jenny's got 5 minutes left on her talk and like the person's not in here yet, so like I'm going through trying to message them on Facebook, trying to text them, try to Facebook them, or email them, just to make sure that they're going to show up. And of course they all showed up except for one person out of 2 events so far has not showed up, but they emailed me that they couldn't, they were very sick.
Oh,
so,
yeah. I mean, I think that for so many people, like one of the big questions always, and it was sort of a funny one, is like, how do you get to speaking? And I was running these like in-person podcast Portland events for a while, and like barely anyone would show up. And it was like in the middle of the winter when I'd be barely in town, and I was really not wanting to go to one. And I remember going to one, and all they did was pick my brain about how I was doing what I was doing, and I was so annoyed. And I really should have appreciated it more. I just didn't want to be outside the house. But the big question was, how are you speaking? How are you making so much money doing this? And I'm like, I'm not making any money doing any of this. Like I'm losing money, but like it wasn't easy to break into speaking even though I'd done like maybe one a year, and then this year there's been a bunch, but I feel like it became the social media side of marketing when I pitched them, because I began to get to know the people like you or at some of the different conferences. And now the question that a lot of people are having is like, do you still apply to speak at conferences? So I really like where you're heading with this, with the conferences, because we can't stop that communication or like still not be working on our presentations. It's not just like, oh, this year we just won't do it, because it
maybe next year, honestly, like the way that a lot of people are talking, we might not be able to do it next year either.
And we'll see how it goes, but I think that I know that I am starting with I'm super stoked. I have 2 content clients right now. And it was because I spoke at She Podcast Live, and they're like, we went into the groups and we got recommendation from other people. But then I remembered that I saw you talk. And I think that we all can be creating our streams and having our workshops like this is, but without other platforms to push it out and speak about it to other people outside of our audiences, it's really hard, besides a name change like yours, that was great, to really get to the audiences that you need to. But if we're shutting down and not creating some of these new events, we're really moving into a land of just desert, and it can't be a desert. We have to be able to continue doing this. So I'm feeling pretty passionate about this. To be honest.
Yeah, I think that there's, I think that virtual events are going to be here for a long time coming, because I think this is their opportunity to step up and get people comfortable with the idea of like, people told me, they were like, oh, I went and did yard work while I listened to the conference, like with my headphones, and I took my iPad around the house while I did dishes and did like all these things, and just was just there. Like I didn't have to sit in a room all day and do all that. So for me, like it just makes sense right now. But I think that people, if they open like their mind and their hearts to it, I think there's going to be a lot more of this coming down the pike. I mean, just for the sake of like, hey, I could spend $2,000 to go to a conference, or I could spend $50 or $100 on a virtual ticket, have a great interactive day, and get work done around the house. And still get the interactive people in the Facebook groups and stuff.
That's exactly so much of it. And I think being a person who works from home, it's going to be very challenging. I'm getting used to being home. I haven't been home in months, and it's nice, but like, I know that it's been important to still have that social side, because so much of it was happening when I was working events, when I was working the trade shows, when I was going to the conferences and speaking, when I was going to see my parents, also like having a trip. And that now we need that I still have that need for socialization and for learning. And it's not always the same. I'm like definitely a hallway track person, as I've said, but I think you get to have that when you're having conversations with people on the mediums like this.
Yeah. I mean, that's one of the things, like I've looked at the idea of like, okay, instead of me just having a one-on-one conversation with somebody to like get to know them, and that's how like the podcast, I'm using that to be that filler, right? That hallway track of like, instead of me just having that conversation and building that relationship, we get to have a great experience. We get to include great people like Phil and Brad and Larry and Britt and Jonathan.
Yeah, totally. I just met Phil today on we were commenting on someone's page, and she's like, how do I get more followers? And then we discovered that we had a connection. He knows one of the founders of CD Baby, and I'm from Portland, which is where CD Baby is. And so I know Kevin Moyer, and just, we both have very, very similar beginnings to the podcast track. And that was just like 3 hours ago. And now he's on the feed and we're friends. Right? That's the joy of stream versus, because I can say, I want to get the followers, but as soon as I started this streaming series, and I was so passionate about it because I wanted to give back, but now I'm having a lot of fun and I'm really sticking to it, and I'm getting less afraid to be in front of people, which is something like virtually, which I think I'd really had some hesitation about for a while. And now I'm like, I can do this standing up, like I can get the dance party, like, we've got the light going. I'm going to in a second. Okay, it's still charging.
Well, it's like a muscle, right? And I noticed this because I did like 100. I did a daily vlog for like 100 days, and after I stopped doing it, it just, like I got more and more afraid of getting in front of the camera, not live streaming so much, because like this is a show, this is a show, so it's a different mentality than like walking around with a giant DSLR and
Oh yeah, it's
you know,
hanging over there.
yeah, and thinking
Yeah.
about like, well, yeah, mine's actually right here. So thinking about it in terms of like, am I, walking around and doing the vlogging thing, and or thinking in terms of like, I got to get B-roll for this scene of of this vlog. Like those are things that I miss it. But I don't know.
I'm in the same boat as a narrative producer, like that's something I love to do, but I also caught myself getting so caught in the head about conceptualize. Like I have a show that I'd love to be a part of, and the timing, unfortunately, just didn't quite work. And I really didn't do the distance that I normally do with projects. And some of it was just that I need more interaction than to spend most of my time immersed in that particular kind of project. And that probably will change, as this changes as well. But that sounded really vague.
Yeah.
but like, yeah, it's like the needs that you have at the time really shift. Brad says we're more techie. Yeah, I definitely will not lie that this show is always going to have a techie feel, because I can't help it. It's just like I start being like, I don't know. I just get into conversations. Like it's weird because I want to have, as a woman in tech, I always want to have more women involved. And I think that sometimes I just nerd out faster with guys, and it's not anything against the tech side. It's just that I think that as women, like I have a women community as well, like a couple different ones. And I've noticed that sometimes we don't go straight to the nerd, because I think that there's this hesitation, and I don't know where we got it from. And it was something I really experienced at Guitar Center, but yeah, I hope that you guys still follow along. I kind of got out of more at Guitar Center, like where I really like let the nerd flag fly.
Well, I wonder if that's because I don't want to say maybe the percentage is the word. Like
it's the percentage.
You're encountering less percentage of women in general that are not going to like geek out about anything tech.
And I need to just fix that, because I work with tech shows. I work with different ones. It's trying to figure out,
right? Like, so it's not like a tech, like USG podcast, but even at G podcast, I'm sure probably like 60% of them don't know the tech past, like whatever they got figured out.
For sure. Yeah, right? For sure. And it's not even that. It's that like I just found myself like being like, I keep just talking to Jay. I just keep talking to Joe. I keep talking to Clay, or like different people. And I'm like, oh no, girl, like you need to pull it back. Where are your girlfriends right now? Sorry. But
well, there's nothing wrong. I mean, look, there's nothing wrong with that. I think it's a good turn there. I know. I think it's great to find a diversity of ideas and people to fill in the blanks. All right, to like fill the blanks for yourself. So I think that if you can find that right community of the people that speak to you. Look, my friends, some of my closest friends, right? They're like way bigger nerds than I am. They're like playing the D&D games and like the tabletop games and the board games, and I'm just like my eyes just kind of glaze over, because I'm like I mean I want to play computer games, so I want fast and furious and get on with my life. Like
to kind of come back to the virtual conferences with that lens, is that one of the cool things is that when you come to a weekly show and you're having like a weekly show and submissions, when you get to do an actual event, you can have a larger pool to pull from and really have that diverse lens, because you're saying we're going to have this one day. It's going to be perspectives I didn't expect to explore in ways that I hadn't thought of in the past. I think that's an interesting thing that I like. So like I learned about a lot of new people in that thread. Because you're not always just picking your buds, you're picking like a good idea and people and like sitting there the whole day and like just listening to them and hanging out with them. Yeah.
Well, because you're not always going to get the same. Again, like what I was just saying, you're not always going to get the same people. Yeah. But and with podcasting conferences in general, it's people that are leaders, right? They're the leaders of that niche or that industry or that thing that are all coming together. So you're getting really powerful people that they get that like what they say matters, even if it only matters to like their 20 listeners right now, right? That part doesn't matter. The point is those 20 listeners have probably 10 to 20 people that are following along with what they are doing, even if they don't have a show or that kind of platform, right? They have friends, they post on social media, and the ripple effect of what happens at a conference is incredible, right? So like, you know, I used to get kind of down on the fact that like, oh, you know, we only have like 100 people in the room or whatever, you know, compared to like, you know, when you look at like, oh man, podcast movement and Podfest have, you know, thousands of people at these events. But the fact of the matter is they are different. It's a different kind of an event. You know, putting everybody in one room on one track, you're getting all the you're getting inside jokes made throughout the day. You're becoming buddies with the people that sit next to each other and getting to interact with those people. So it's not like, oh man, like there's that famous podcaster person that I look up to and it's like, oh, there they go. And like, I never see them again. They're like, they're up on the stage and then they're like sitting 3 people over. And then when we take a break, I can go open and introduce myself. And now that, you know, we become friendly or friends or more, like whatever, you know, so it's that opportunity that actually I think matters more than like worrying about the number. Because again, like if you, so like, here's an example, right? Max lost his bag. Max, the blind blogger, lost his bag from Amtrak. And Karen Yankovic was like, hey, we need to tweet at Amtrak and get his bag back. We cannot have it happen. So we did, because collectively he had over 1 million followers in the room.
Oh, that's fair.
Yeah. So like we did it. And guess what?
He got his bag back.
10-15 minutes they were like, oh, okay, they were talking with Karen back and forth, and then they were like, well, we can get your bag back to the station, but we can't get it to you. And I was and they're like, I'm like, he's blind, like you expect him to go, like it's 20 minutes to the airport, so he's got to get a ride and then find his way to wherever you're telling him. No, so they Ubered the bag to the hotel.
Oh, that's cool. That's a really great story.
Like he was one of the writers, like Amtrak's writers of the year or something, where he was allowed to travel for free on Amtrak for like a year.
Oh my God, that's amazing.
Yeah, exactly. So like, but even with all that, like they didn't care. They were just like, you know, it happens all the time. He's just leaves casually. And like, no, it does not. This isn't how it's happening.
I mean, that's the power of events. You know, I think that's the difference between the summits. It's like I've done, you know, a few summits at this point, and they're fun and they're good. But I think some of the challenges is I'm sitting there promoting it because there's like a fund that it's going to, and maybe and then there's a worry, a stress about like, oh, you have to like have this thing prepared for it. And then maybe you'll get people to your main site. But some of the virtual summits, you don't even get a mailing list, you know, and some of them have, and that's been super helpful. I got like 300 from one in the fall. And then another one I got like nothing from, right? And but it's weird sort of, but the idea of the conference with the feedback loop has been fun, and it's felt closer to that 100%.
Yeah, I mean, some people asked me if I was getting, you know, email lists growing and all that stuff, and I was like, right now, like, to me, it's just more important that people see us, right? And interact with us and see like that there's people here that are, you know, wanting to be cool and hang out and do these things. And
you've talked to those 30 people and all the other people you've spoken to every single day. So like you're community forming. And that's, you know, when you're thinking about events, I think that some of it is like, you know, like here I'm having an event, show up. But what does it bring to the other people? And I think some of the event planning, like the ones that I've had the most fun with, like have no outside funding, or, you know, it's not about funding. It's about like, let's all do karaoke on Friday night. I don't know any of these people, or like, let's do a table read. Let's have that be fun. And you can also have those on top of some of these more organized virtual conferences, or that can even be a part of it. Like you could really just be like, hey, we're having our closing night. It's karaoke. Like, you know, really, ultimately you can do it. Like if you have your celebrations for, that's sort of one of the things I'm thinking about is Gritty Bird is celebrating 5 years in just a couple weeks. And so it's like, I'm like, yeah. I mean,
when is that? When we said a couple weeks, when is
well, so technically I released it on my birthday, so I just put the two together. So it's like May 11th is going to be
I was 9 days later, May 20th.
Oh, nice. Yeah, you're right on the cusp of Taurus. Yeah. So yeah, I'm excited, and I want to do something for the community because the community's been so amazing to me over the years. But I don't know what, you know what I mean? Like, do I want to do like a concert series? Do I want to have some kind of, like within that week? And I've been thinking about it, and I don't know yet. And that's sort of the next step for this series. That's the next step for this series. Is like, tying the podcasting and the music together, because like it has become more podcasting than music, and it used to be like all music. And then I'm like, I'm a podcaster. Can you tell I'm a podcaster? Now everyone's like, you're a musician. Yeah.
Well, yeah. I mean, and that's one of the tricky parts of being, I would say being me, right? Like I'm a business coach, a business consultant, but I'm also a podcaster that and a DJ and a gamer and all these things. But DJing, like there's the turntables like right there.
Yeah. You've been doing DJ nights. So if you he wants to be cool. Yeah, you can go to.
Brad is cool.
Brad is cool. I don't think I've met Brad. Hi, Brad. Nice to meet you. Yeah. You've been doing these DJ nights. My friend Amani as well. He did a great event last night. I probably should throw this up there. He just released a book, and I forgot what the name of it is. How to be a DJ. Amani's awesome, and he had an event. So he had a speaker. He had like timed event. He streams regularly to Twitch. He did a DJ set at one point. It was killer. And there's options for you to like have these multifaceted events like you normally have. And if like right now 6 people are streaming, I think our top was like 15 or 13, something like that. And it ends up people can come back later, but it does feel sort of like you conquered something. And however you do your event, I guess, to come, full circle as we're heading to the last like couple minutes of here, Yeah,
I don't expect people to go back and rewatch the replays, but like people have reached out to me to go and rewatch those replays of things. Like, oh, where do I get it? I'm like, well, it's still at the same link you went to. So
for those were killer because people really put some effort into some of those workshops.
There really was.
I'm like some of them did some work.
Well, it's really there was a lot of work put into those talks for sure. And hey, look, and things don't always go right. Like we talked about, I don't want to end on like everything's perfect and everything's cool. Like we had an issue right on the first day where people cursed a lot, and turns out I actually had in my speaker agreement form that you are not supposed to use foul language. Now the 2 people, I don't think either of them actually filled out the form, those 2 people. So so they clearly probably didn't read it, because I don't think they're the ones that filled it out. So things go wrong, and then sometimes you don't always make the right decision. In my case, I didn't make the right decision. I had to atone for that after the fact, because I didn't feel right about it the more I thought about it. So,
but you still made the right measures, and this is a thing we hadn't brought up yet. Is like, do have a speaker agreement. If you have people coming on to something, don't just say we'll see you at 3. I mean, here I've been pretty loose with this one, so I haven't been sending out speaker agreements at all, because it's like so far all 4 have been my friends, and so it's been a little different. But yeah, do have like some kind of speaker agreement. Have some kind of graphic that they can send out for their social media and a link. Like those are some basics.
Yeah,
but if I know anything from podcasting, there's just so often people just ignore those steps, so you can reiterate it, but it's not always going to be read. It's not always going to be paid attention to.
Yeah, and that's true. Even when you spell it out, people will still write to you and ask you like, where. Well, you've watched Clerks, I'm sure, right, Jenny?
Oh yeah, of course. Yeah, 100%.
99-cent bag of chips, like, and like they're staying over the sign, right? Like people aren't going. And
my whole life at Guitar Center was like them asking questions, and I'm like, yep. And it was like listed, or people just don't always look. And I think it's a nice reminder to be patient with humans.
And, I don't really read either. So like for me, I try to give the benefit of the doubt, but it's hard to know like how much is too much and how much is not enough. Right. So it's really hard to put into like to figure that out. Like if I write this out, how can I write it? Because like I wrote one of those emails that I think you received, where I wrote like, hey, here's all the top questions, right? I used that same email, sent it for the second conference, and there was still people that wrote back asking the same questions that were like literally answered, and I tried to space it out so that it's as easy to read as possible. So you just don't know.
Yeah. Well, I think we're just about tying up, and I just want to say thank you so much for coming on to this. This week it was sort of like, I don't know how to fill in an hour talking about events, because online it's still like, you know what I mean? Like I can talk about events, but like because things don't work the same virtually, to say this is how you create an event doesn't translate. And I was like, I know this guy and he's been killing it. You know, like there's some other musicians I think that would also be really great for how they're getting their communities going. But I think you've just been killing it and it's been fun. So yeah. Well,
it's all about, all right, so last things, right?
Yeah.
It's all about problem solving, right? Seeing the problem and then thinking way through it without losing your cool or panicking, and just really being able to dig in and do the research to figure out like, okay, how can I put this into motion? And I think also right now, like if you have a community and you're not like standing up and rallying people, like you deserve, like, sorry, but you really don't deserve it.
I completely lost all of that.
I know you're breaking up on my end. So if you're not standing up right now and rallying your community, then you are doing it wrong and you don't deserve the community that you're trying to that you're building.
Take that burn, friends. Take that burn and listen to it. If that affects you, know that you need to step up. I don't know what else to say about that. That's quite a call to arms, and it's necessary to be said.
You need to. Well, I've seen other people calling other people out. Like today, one of my friends, Gerard, is a pressure washer. He has a pressure washer company, but he also has a pressure washer community. And he called out people that he's like, I don't see these people stepping up. I don't see them rallying their communities. I don't see them doing any of that stuff. And he's like, they're the ones that are supposed to be the rock stars of our industry, and they ain't doing jack.
Right. Yeah.
Like, so,
I mean, you've been doing all these feeds in different places too. So it's not just like if you have one platform, if you have three. So like if I wanted to do something with Podcast Portland, I could do something with Podcast Portland one week, or like the next month I could do with Gritty Birds. Like you still can use and have those feeds going different places, and you do that with your shows all the time. So figure out how you can help. Yeah.
Is to call myself out. I haven't done too much of my Dreamers podcast, but I also just announced in the show that I'm going to be changing the name to the Super Joe Pardo Show.
Good. That's a good name.
The one do it. Thank you. Larry Roberts is the one putting together the artwork, which we are just finalizing. So it looks awesome, and I can't wait to get it switched over. And once I do, I'm going to start scheduling a regular time to transition it over to a live show. I'd like to do video, like YouTube video, like, and then strip the audio out, but that just takes up way too much time and effort that I don't have right now. And being able to just jump on, do it, and then upload the audio file, it just I can do it.
It takes hours. It takes forever. Even this one, when I download it and put it up onto YouTube, it takes forever. Like just because it's just rendering. Yeah. It's just thinking for a really, really long time. And I have a fast processor, so I don't know. There I went getting techie, and I don't apologize. Anyway, thank you so much for coming on. It's always a pleasure seeing your face. And next week, I'm going to be heading back into the world of microphones. And I've got some really cool guests that I'm talking to who are going to be coming on probably over the next couple weeks, and who are very, 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 killing it with a couple different audio companies. So we're going to have fun with that, because mics are fun for me. And this is all fun as well, but let's just keep nerding out and learning from each other. So that's it today for Gritty Birds Podcasting Free Fridays. I'm continuing to tweak the format. So Wednesdays are still on for interviews, but I might be moving it to something closer to what's happening today. So, if you're watching any of these and have feedback, I love to hear it. You can find me GrittyBirds.com/Free Fridays is where you can get the mailing list, sign up, and then you can just reply to me from there. So that's my spiel. And thank you again, Joe.
Thank you.
Put those sound effects on. Put on a sound effect.
Oh, what do we got? Here's the Super Joe Pardo theme song.
All right, that's my next step, is get those going. All right, well, I will see you soon, and take care, guys.